the Afghanistan debacle 10 years ago? Jimmy Dore seems to think so. Let's talk about it, y'all. Middle America.
Again, all this idea that...
I'll see you in a second, Jimmy. We'll see you in a second, buddy. Okay, guys. Here we
go.
go.
They're writing...
This is... who am I going to hold responsible for this? The big homie... welcome, everybody, by the way. Where are my manners? My name is Vincent. This is Middle America with Vin and Sori. We are not left-wing. We're not right-wing. We're just right. Honestly, we're lifelong Christian conservatives who are, what is it, flirting with progressivism, I think is the idea. Shaming my mother. If my mom could see me now. Now, I think my mom would have loved Bernie, actually, because my mom was a big, what do you call it? What's the guy, Jimmy Carter? She loved Jimmy Carter. She just said he was worthless. They couldn't do anything, but he was a really nice guy. But anyway, we were taught to just vote R right down the line, and so was Soraya, obviously. So we're checking this out. Okay, so actually, Tasco is in the house because he was the one that recommended this video. He said, "Yo, your man Jimmy Dore did a thing on Ron Paul. So if you don't like this, then we can just blame him." And that's kind of my strategy. My strategy is to blame the people in my community for this stuff, if you're angry, so that all the trouble and pain can go on their side and we can be free. All right, we continue. Here we go.
Articles now that say it was an intelligence failure. And so here's Ron Paul from 2011.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of strange. People are now acting like, oh my gosh, what a failure. It's like people were predicting this at the beginning of the war in Afghanistan. They were saying it was Vietnam and all the rest of it. Now, the corollary to that, the answer to that was, well, we don't have the same goals and aims as the Russians did. We're not trying to occupy Afghanistan. We just want bin Laden. That was the argument at the beginning. But that was 20 years ago, so how soon we forget. But we continue.
So that's 10 years ago, the halfway point of this war, a decade in, a decade left. And Ron Paul was prescient, and he knew exactly what was going to happen.
See, Jimmy does this whole, I'm just some guy in my whatever, like he's not an intelligent guy. He is intelligent. He's a smart guy. I love me some Jimmy Dore. Shout out to the homie Jimmy Dore, by the way. I'm putting this thing down here. I'm going to say 24 hours. We did do a Jimmy Dore interview. We are going to release it in 24 hours. I just didn't release it because it has serious technical difficulties, and I'm debating whether or not I'm even going to publish it because it's that bad. But anyway, there you go. All right, so we continue.
He predicts it here, and I'm just going to play this, and now you know why the military-industrial complex and the establishment media hates Ron Paul. Why do they? You see the establishment hacks in the media that I just showed you always want more war, and if you end a war, they're going to ridicule you.
That is true. Those guys, them boys, they can't stand Ron Paul. I'll tell you what. I'm not the biggest fan of Ron Paul. Ron Paul is really interesting in my political development because Ron Paul was really the first guy that turned me against all of these wars. It was 2000. I was in the thick of it. 2012. It was actually 2012. I think he was running for president, and he had this spot where he was talking about, imagine if there were, like Saudi tanks in our, in America, blah, blah, blah. He was just talking about what we're doing all across the world. And it was like really the first time I was like, oh, shit, we are kind of doing this all around the world. This is kind of not good. It's like when you guys see DL and he has these revelations that America is not what he thought America should be. But I'm very grateful that I found Ron Paul in at that time period. But I gotta say, some of the stuff that he says about healthcare is just nightmarish to me. There was one particular time he was like, what is this idea that we're obligated to care for other people's health care? He was in a debate, and it was just like, it was unbelievable. Of course, the entire crowd erupted. And so that was the end of me and Ron. So actually, what was interesting was he was the guy that really turned me against all these regime change wars, but he was also really the first person that made me, I don't know, pro Medicare for all, because I didn't have the language at the time. But I discovered Bernie Sanders like a month before I saw that clip with Ron Paul. So then when I saw that Ron Paul clip, I was like, yo, that's really crazy. That's terrible. So like, I'm not a fan of Ron Paul. Ever since then, I'm not saying he's like an eternally horrible person or anything like that. I just, for me, like, that was it for me. However, we've got to mature in our thinking. Okay. We can say, okay, he's dead wrong on healthcare, but he's right on war, so let's team up with him to end all these regime change wars. And then when we do that, we can then, you know, turn the guns on him, right, and make sure we get Medicare for all. But we've got to mature in our thinking. Like, even though I'm not a fan of Ron Paul, I do think that he's an expert in this particular field, and he talks about war in ways that are practical to the right. And so I think there's a lot of value there.
Like Richard Engel did, right? Just like Liz Cheney. It's like all those pukes. So here is Ron Paul 10 years ago going to let us know. I'm going to step out of the frame.
I thank the gentleman, and Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
The question we're facing today is, should we leave Afghanistan? I think the answer is very clear, and it's not complicated. And of course, we should, as soon as we can. This suggests that we can leave by the end of the year.
That's common sense, right? Of course we should. Now, this was 2011. I think we got UBL 11 or 12. I'm not sure. I'm assuming this is before we got UBL because, well, I mean, I don't know. Let's see.
If we don't, we'll be there for another decade, would be my prediction. The American people are now with us. A group of us here in the Congress, bipartisan group, for nearly a decade have been talking about this, arguing not to expand the war, not to be over there, not to be a nation building. And
yeah, this whole this whole nation building thing was a cruel joke. I mean, who really thought that? Who really thought that? Nation building is doublespeak for occupation, destruction, killing civilians, and raping the land of its resources. And I use the term rape very, very carefully.
American people didn't pay much attention. Now they are. The large majority of the American people now say it's time to get out of Afghanistan. It's a fruitless venture. Too much has been lost. The chance of winning, since we don't even know what we're going to win, doesn't exist.
That's a major problem. If you go to World War II, right, you say, how do you win? You say, well, stopping the Blitzkrieg and getting the Japanese and the Germans to surrender. You don't have to really worry about the Italians much. They took care of their own business. There was a way to gauge victory in World War II. What are the clear objectives in Afghanistan? Remember, the initial premise was these guys are harboring UBL. They asked for evidence that UBL was the mastermind behind 9/11. We gave him none, right? So Ron Paul is 100% right here.
They are tired of it. Financially, there's a good reason to come home as well. Some argue we have to be there because if we leave under these circumstances, we'll lose face. It will look embarrassing to leave. So how many more men and women have to die? How many more dollars have to be spent to save face? That is one of the worst arguments possible.
One of the worst. if not the worst. But it also tells you the perception of the American people by these elites. That's how they perceive us. They perceive us to be so nationalistic that we would be willing to spend millions and billions of dollars in money and millions of gallons of blood in order to save face on the stage of the world. What do you mean save face? As in, we don't want to look like we're surrendering and the Taliban beat us and waited us out, so we're going to have people die? American men and women in uniform dying, and more importantly, Afghani children. They got to die so that we can look like the only global empire on the planet. Look, America, look, it's very simple. Looking at the world, when you talk about the quote-unquote defense budget, which country has attacked us in the last 100 years? Which country as a country has actually attacked us? That was Japan, right? Like that was the last time a state actor actually went and attacked us, right? If I recall. Why aren't people after World War II attacking America? Because they know they can't. You don't want any smoke with the U.S., including China. They don't want any smoke with us. That's a fact. So why are we over in Afghanistan? They are no threat to us. That question was never, ever answered. Never.
We're not there under legal conditions. This is a war. Who says it isn't a war? Everybody talks about the Afghan war. Was the war declared? Of course not. It wasn't declared.
He's right again. There are procedures that the founding fathers who created this great nation anticipated. They anticipated certain situations. As a matter of fact, they anticipated these very specific issues, and so that's why they constructed it in such a way as to, this is how you declare war. But what do? We just went in and we just end around, just doing the end around the Constitution and do what we want to do anyway. And now here you are. Unbelievable.
There was a resolution passed that said that the president at that time, under the emergency of 9/11, could go and deal with Al-Qaeda, those who dealt.
Saudi Arabia attacked the U.S. Ashura. When I asked the question, I said, as a state actor, right? So if you're talking about Muhammad Atta and those boys in 9/11, that doesn't count as Saudi attacking us. That's people from Saudi Arabia attacking us. In much the same way that ISIS is not Syria, right? So there are no state actors from Saudi that have attacked us in the name of Saudi Arabia. That's what I'm talking about. Like the Japanese attacked us in the name of Japan. There's no country in the world that's going to attack America as their country, is my point.
And brought upon the 9/11 bombings. That is one of the worst arguments possible. We're not there under legal conditions. This is a war. Who says it isn't a war? Everybody talks about the Afghan war.
Correct.
Was the war declared? Of course not. It wasn't declared. There was a resolution passed that said that the president at that time, under the emergency of 9/11, could go and deal with Al-Qaeda, those who dealt and brought upon the 9/11 bombing.
Founding fathers stole the land from indigenous people. Right. So those people were very aware of human corruption. That's my point. They knew how nasty they were, and they perceived themselves to be superior to everybody. So they looked around each other and said, we know that we're nasty as fuck, and we're the best of all humanity. So let's create a bunch of checks and balances so that we don't get caught up in these crazy ass wars that we're in. And even that we didn't listen to. That's my point. I have no illusions that the founding fathers were quote unquote great men. I'm a lover of my people. However, what Ron Paul is talking about is he's saying we cannot stay consistent with our own principles here to even justify this war. Secondly, we have foreign policy decisions and institutions that precipitated 9/11, which America did not want to hear at that time. And when I say America, I'm specifically talking about me. I didn't want to hear that shit. I didn't care why people attacked us. I didn't care what the geopolitics were behind it. I didn't even care about prevention. My understanding of prevention was just go kill all of them. That's how you prevent, because if they're all dead, they can't do it again. That was the mentality that I had at the time, right? So I'm not speaking as somebody who's above it all. I'm saying that this dude is speaking some very, very hard truths to his home court, because nobody on the right wanted to hear that we were in any way, shape, or form responsible for 9/11. By the way, I lost a aunt in 9/11, so I'm not speaking about this as some disembodied observer. We continue.
But Al-Qaeda is not there anymore. So we're fighting the Taliban. The Taliban used to be our allies at one time when the Soviets were there. Taliban wants, their main goal is to keep foreign occupationers out. They want foreigners out of their country. They're not Al-Qaeda. Yet.
Well, the Tali and Al-Qaeda were a lot closer ideologically than, say, for example, the Tali and ISIS, or even Al-Qaeda in Iraq. Like this idea that you can put all Salafists in one little bag together is untrue. Now, I will say the argument Al-Qaeda is not the Tali, it's just a dumb argument, because ideologically speaking, they're essentially from the same denomination, although the Tali's emphasis was more on installing Sharia and having that work on a practical level. Whereas Al-Qaeda, so they were more, we need to hold the fort and like purify Afghanistan. Where Al-Qaeda was more, saw themselves as the military wing of the Islamic Ummah, basically to, drive American military interests out of Saudi and other places, which obviously is a valid goal, because we certainly wouldn't tolerate it if it was the other way around. But the dichotomy between Al-Qaeda and the Taliban, ideologically, they're pretty close to each other. So it's a 6.5 dozen.
Most Americans, maybe less so now, but the arguments here on the floor is we got to go after Al-Qaeda. This is not a war against Al-Qaeda. If anything, it gives the incentive for Al-Qaeda to grow in numbers rather than dealing with them.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree with that. He's right about that.
You know, the money issue. We're talking about a lot of money. Huh? How much do we spend in a year? Probably.
This is how you got to talk to Republicans. You got to talk about, you. All right, let me say it this way, because I want to be fair to my Republican friends, right? But when I say Republican, I also mean people who believe in Joe Biden. Now, there's a difference between a person who voted Joe Biden because they were convinced that that Trump was the Antichrist. There's a difference between a person who does that and a person who like believes in Joe Biden. So if you believe in Joe Biden, like you actively voted for Joe Biden, there's no real difference between a person like that and a Republican, right? And so what I would say though is you cannot do a moral argument alone and convince folks with that kind of mentality. A moral argument alone doesn't wash with them, because they're going to look at that as you being emotional, right? This happens all the time. When you point out something being immoral, the way that the person that is immoral circumvents the argument is they say, oh, you're just being emotional. So we're going to call it a fetus and not a baby. And if you call it a baby, you're being emotional, even though there's no etymological difference between baby and fetus. Stuff like that. So you can't argue that way with these folks. So the way that Ron is arguing now is the most effective way I've found to argue with people of that disposition. Hey, it's going to cost you more money that you could use for yourself, because we are so desensitized to killing human beings that simply saying, hey, we're killing a bunch of people. I don't know how many times last year I've talked about how many those pine nut farmers. We killed 30 pine nut farmers for no reason over there in Afghanistan. Nobody cared. Left, right, up, down, purple, blue, LGBT, whatever. Nobody cared. It's just, yeah, man, that's really fucked up. And then we went on with our day. So I think we've got to take a sober look at ourselves as, I don't know what I am. I'm not a progressive. I don't know what I am. But we got to take a sober look at ourselves and say, what are we doing to end this bullshit, really? And are we the type of people that can be convinced only by a moral argument, or do we need other incentives to do the right thing? Interesting question.
130 billion up to $1 trillion now in this past decade. Later on in the day, we're going to have two votes. We're going to have a vote on doing something sensible, making sense out of our foreign policy, bringing our troops home, and saving hundreds of billions of dollars. And then we also will have a vote against NPR to cut the funding of NPR.
I don't know who this Vosh fellow was, but if Tasco is right, holy shit. He was arguing against withdrawing from Afghanistan and said it's a relatively inexpensive occupation. What? Okay. That dude, you must got Bezos money, bro. If you think $300 million a day is small potatoes, holy shit.
There is a serious question about whether that will even cut one penny, but at least the fiscal conservatives are going to be overwhelmingly in support of slashing NPR, go home and brag about how they're so great fiscal conservatives, and the very most they might save is $10 million. And that's their claim to fame for slashing the budget. At the same
There it is. There it is.
time, they won't consider for a minute cutting a real significant amount of money. All empires end for fiscal reasons because they spread themselves too far around the world, and that's what we're facing. We're in the midst of a military conflict.
Yeah, there it is. He's absolutely right. What he just said back there, I'm going to rewind that a little bit.
Empires end for fiscal reasons because they spread themselves too far around the world, and that's what we're facing.
That's a fact. There's no human being or group of human beings that's supposed to take over the world. You remember, we learned this as kids, right? Every time you're the bad guy, it's like, yo, I'm going to take over the world, blah, blah, blah. Their plots always failed. So, here we are in the simulation. It's the same shit, bro. Like, we cannot take over the world no matter how powerful we are. We don't get to, rule the planet. It doesn't matter how powerful you are, how much military you have. That is going to fail because the human spirit is bigger than a warhead. You cannot kill the human spirit with a warhead. Eventually, human beings are going to say, fuck this shit. So it's impossible to maintain a global empire, but here come the Americans. Well, we're going to try, damn it.
In the midst of a military conflict that's contributing to this inevitable crisis, and it's financial, and you'd think there'd be a message in the fact of how did the Soviets come down? By doing the very same thing that we're doing.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Only worse. Only worse. Shout out to Viet Cong forever. Every time he says something, I always point it out because, look, we cover a lot of tough shit in Middle America, and it's good from time to time to take respite. Go check out Viet Cong Forever on Twitter. He always has these most amazing landscapes of the Vietnamese, and there's always action shots and them in their, I call them Raiden hats, Mortal Kombat, whatever. Like, it's not like a zoo, like look at these people in their natural habitat. It's more of like, here are our brothers and sisters over there in the Pacific, I think. And, this is these beautiful people. And they were attacked unjustly. And they fought back against the world superpower, and they survived. And I think it's a testament to the human spirit. Again, I'm not anti-America. But when you look at the beautiful people of Vietnam, you say, what the fuck did they do to deserve all those bodies? Because even though they won that war, we killed those guys like 4-1, right? What did they do to us to deserve that type of treatment? Then you see them, taking care of business, little Vietnamese kid with his little sister. It's just like, wow, man, like, damn, like we couldn't, like, think about all the millions of dollars we spent on murdering those people in Vietnam. What if we would have taken that money and said, here you go, Vietnam, here's $1 billion in the 60s. Go nation build yourself a school or a hospital or something, courtesy of the U.S. That's also a way to sweeten up the VC in regard to capitalism versus quote unquote socialism or communism, right? Because that's the reason we entered Vietnam. We wanted to stop communism. There's lots of ways to skin a cat, but what do we want to do? We want to bring the hammer. Okay, so that was a whatever. Let's go back to Ron Paul. Shout out to VC Forever.
Actual occupation of a country. We don't need to be occupying Afghanistan or any other country. We don't even need to be considered going into Libya and where else. Fortunately, I guess for those of us who would like to see less of this killing.
Did you notice he said we don't need to be in Libya or anywhere else? Read that. Watch that again.
Conflict that's contributing to this inevitable crisis, and it's financial. And you'd think there'd be a message in the fact of how did the Soviets come down? By doing the very same thing that we're doing, perpetual occupation of a country. We don't need to be occupying Afghanistan or any other country. We don't even need to be considered going into Libya and where else.
Consider going into Libya. The 2011, it's like right as the Arab Spring was really popping, about to really start popping. He's like, we don't need to go into Libya. Sorry, Ron Paul. But a couple of days later, our infinite wisdom, there we were. What did Hillary say? We came, we saw, we killed him in regard to Muammar Gaddafi. And then they reopened slave markets in Libya.
Fortunately, I guess for those of us who would like to see less of this killing, we will have to quit because we won't be able to afford it. The process that we're going through is following the War Powers Resolution. This is a proper procedure. It's call attention to how we slip into these wars. I have always claimed that it's the way we get into the wars that are the problem. If we would be precise and only go...
And just for the record, I am already against the next war. I'm already against it. We continue.
War, with a declaration of war, get with the people behind us, knowing who the enemy is, and fight, win, and get it over with, that would be more legitimate. They don't do it now because the American people wouldn't support it. Nobody's going to declare war against Afghanistan or Iraq or Libya.
Or Egypt, Libya, or Syria. So we concocted the Arab Spring and sent in alphabet groups and Green Berets and such to foment rebellion among these people, arm these people, and so that they could do our will by proxy. That's what happened. That's what that was.
So we now have been so careless for the past 50 or 60 years that we have, as a Congress and especially a House, we have reneged on our responsibilities. We have avoided our prerogatives of saying that we have the control. We have the control of the purse. We have control of when we're supposed to go to war. And yet the wars continue. They never stop. And yet we are going to be completely brought down to our knees.
You have to ask yourself if there isn't something. So I'm looking at this thing, panpsychism. You know, it's a long story, but this understanding of like a collective consciousness, right? At least at the human level. You have to think that at some level, you have to wonder if America as a whole, or even as a majority, isn't collectively mentally ill. And that the mental illness itself is something that may be undocumented or maybe new, in the sense of this sort of nationalistic, ethnocentric hysteria where the spreading of the empire literally and metaphorically trumps every other value, including self-preservation. Anybody who knows anything the rudiments of war knows that you never fight a two-front war. You try to avoid two-front wars as much as you possibly can. Most land nav strategies are designed to divide fire and divide attention so as to give the initiator of the division the upper hand, right? So that's what flanking is, right? Flanking is a dividing fire exercise, and you do that so that you can have an advantage. And so when you look at collectively our nation, you get a guy that says, hey, our big thing is money, right? We're right-leaning people. We want fiscal conservatism. We're setting fire to millions and billions of dollars a day. We're fighting two front wars. That generally means you're going to lose. Historically speaking, we've seen the trajectory of countries that have tried to accomplish this. They're batting 1,000 in that they all lose and their people suffer as a result of it. So maybe we should pull everything back, keep our money, keep our trillions, and be a superpower for the next 500 years. That's a rational thing to do, would be to pull out for that reason alone. Forget the moral shit. But we won't. And there wasn't a massive outcry. Think about it. 2011, 2012, 2013, millions of dollars a day. Why was there not a national outrage and outcry to get these folks home so we can take care of ourselves? I understand there's apathy. I understand there's ignorance and all the rest of it. But there has got to be some sort of mental hysteria, whatever, illness that has resulted in Americans, us, not and myself included, not being able to see and act in such a way as to promote self-preservation. That's one of the clearest signs that somebody is in a bad situation, when they can no longer make rational decisions that further their own interests and their own preservation. Something to think about.
Can't change Afghanistan. People who are bragging about these changes, even if you could, you're not supposed to. You don't have the moral authority. You don't have the constitutional authority. So I would say the sooner.
Yeah. This is something that's really difficult for Americans to understand. Here's a news flash, ladies and gentlemen. Democracy is not a flawless system. And it is not a universally applicable system around the globe. It's not. It works in the Western world to a degree. But if you believe that what we have in America currently is a democracy, you're a joke. As I said in the previous, not you're a joke, but you believe something that I think is joke worthy. How about you're an image bearer of God, crowned with glory and honor. You're not a joke. But you get my point. Ladies and gentlemen, I talked about this yesterday. We got a guy named Epstein, and all of us hate him because, if all the reports are right, he hurt little children and hurt little girls. So he gets what he gets. But principially speaking, you live in a country where a guy who had dirt on his political friends in high places was summarily executed without trial before he could stand trial and expose those people. But you live in a democracy. The DNC, what they did in 2016 to Bernie Sanders, you live in a democracy. The DNC, the bullshit they pulled on us in Iowa last year, but we live in a democracy. In 2016, having the choices of Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump as our only viable options, that's a democracy. Then when you get a guy like Jimmy Dore who says, hey, maybe we should make these people earn our votes, and then everybody and their mother on the left collapses on that guy and rebukes him and Susan Sarandon for saying maybe our vote means something, and then you attack the guy who says that, but you live in a democracy. That's what we want to export to the world. That's what we want to export to the world. And now we sit in judgment. Look at these Afghani women. They're forced to wear burqas. And then when I go shopping with my son to get some milk at the corner store, every third magazine has some naked body of some woman whose naked body is being used to sell everything from bear to Band-Aids. My son was, he was 5 years old at the time, went to the front and I said, look, man, can you guys not put those fucking magazines by the fucking milk? I'm trying to teach my son certain things about women and men and how we interact with each other, and you guys aren't helping me. And then the lady looked at me like I was from the planet, Xenon or something. What do you mean? She's like, you want the magazines taken down? I said, well, at least keep them away from heavy trafficked areas where kids could be or where I could be. She thought I was from some crazy planet. And we don't treat women very well in this country either. We don't treat women very well in this country. It was like 391,000 women were sexually assaulted last year. I think it was like 200,000 of them were, sex trafficked or whatever. We don't have any moral authority in any way, shape, or form to judge anyone on anything. Nothing is wrong with women's bodies, Dewey. What is wrong, though, is exploiting the female body as a commodity to sell your wares, as if her function was simply the sexual gratification of men. That's what I have a problem with. The female body, we all know, is the pinnacle of all God's creation. And I believe that to be the objective truth. What I don't like, though, as a man with a daughter, is the exploitation of the female body. I don't like the way that we treat women in this country at all. To me, I look at both sides as being exploitative and chauvinistic against women to the extreme. Both worlds. And I am not certain who's worse. I'm not certain who's worse.
The sooner...
Give him 30 more seconds.
Gentleman is recognized for 30 more seconds.
I would say the sooner the better. We can come home. This process has come home under the law.
Am I against men's fitness? Well, it depends. Again, Men's Fitness is a magazine designed for men who want a certain type of body, right? That's the entire goal of the magazine itself. So if there's a women's fitness magazine and there's a girl in a bikini, okay, fine, because that's what that audience is gunning for. What I'm talking about is the fact that women's naked bodies are used to sell everything in this culture. That's my problem. Or watching commercials on a Sunday afternoon because we're all watching football, and you see how women's bodies are being used and exploited. My point is, Americans love to judge the treatment of women in these Islamic countries, but never recognize the way that we treat women in this country. That's my problem. That's my issue. Go look at the prison sentences for marijuana distribution in the 90s, and then look at the prison sentences for sexual assault. So the way that we treat women in this country, no matter how progressive we think we are, is not very good. That's my point. And so Ron Paul is saying, look, we Americans have no moral authority to criticize anyone about anything. That's my point. We have no right to criticize anyone about anything. And so for Americans, I think it was Nancy Pelosi, one of these people who showed up in a burqa on the floor of the U.S. Senate. You know, there's that picture of the girl in Afghanistan with the eyes, and the eyes were like, it was like so powerful, that girl. And they followed up with her, National Geographic. She did an interview, and she basically talked about, you know, because that picture, she got famous, she had all these Western people trying to rescue her from Afghanistan. And she was like, this is my home, this is where I live, and I love it here. No. See, this is the mindset of the ethnocentric Westerner. All these poor oppressed women in Afghanistan. Are there oppressed women? Absolutely. Not recognizing there is a hell of oppression here for women as well. We continue.
It says you should start bringing troops home within 30 days. This allows up to the end of the year after.
Right. As MJ says, girls are singled out to be sexual and then shamed when it's embraced. Correct. And look, look what happened with Britney Spears. This is a woman at the height of womandom, quadrillionaire, whatever, and her life is still being controlled by her father. Okay? So Americans have no room to talk about how we treat women at all in any way, shape, or form. We're getting distracted here. We continue.
After this would be passed. But this needs to be done, and a message needs to be sent. And someday we have to wake up and say, if you are a fiscal conservative, you ought to look at the waste. This is military Keynesianism to believe that we should do this forever. So I would say this is the day to be on record.
Do it forever. I heard a guy talking about we need to think about this in the context of 100 years or 300 years. It was a Jimmy Dore show or something like that. And I was like, holy shit, I got to record this. I got to shoot a video on this. And then I forgot because I was playing Fortnite. Stuck for a while. But yeah, it's like if you're against the withdrawal, I understand. Like, you'd have to be a sociopath not to be moved by the images that we've all seen the last couple days and the images that we're no doubt going to see in the next couple days. But what's the alternative? The alternative, we stay there for 300 years. Somebody's like, oh, we're going to stay there for 300 years. What? When? When would we ever get out? Holy moly.
And vote for this resolution.
So, isn't it weird that Ron Paul knew exactly what was going to happen?
Here's my buddy Ben. Ben says, do you not see the irony of saying nobody has a moral authority being stated in a morally authoritative tone? I didn't say that nobody has moral authority, bro. What I said was America as a nation has no moral authority to tell the Afghani people anything. So if I'm a representative of the United States, I can't tell them they treat women horribly. But me as the individual, sure, if we can stay consistent with our own moral imperatives, and inshallah, I'm trying as hard as I can to stay consistent with my own logic and morality. But no, of course people can say things are right or wrong. What I'm saying is that the United States has lost the moral credibility to be in that ring to make those determinations. That's my point.
He knew this war was going to last another decade, and he got it right 100%. And I don't know if you remember when he ran for president, they'll try to make him out to be crazy. And why did they make
that? Is true. That's true. They tried to make it look like Ron Paul was just some weird person who didn't know what he was talking about.
Out to be crazy? Because he wanted to end the wars. That's why. Now, do I disagree with Ron Paul on domestic issues? Sure.
See? I think Ron Paul is horrific when it comes to health care. I don't think he's like kind of wrong. I think he's horrifically wrong when it comes to health care. But he's right when it comes to war. And this is what I'm saying. A, we need a third party. And even when I say third party, guys, I'm wrong. Because there's already 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I don't know how many parties there actually are. But you know what I'm saying. We need a viable third party. And then what we need to do is appeal to people like Ron. We need to be an issues-based third party. A policy-based third party. So you got a war division, which is we're going to go to war to make sure there's no more wars. So you get Ron Paul, big anti-war advocate. You get, what's homegirl's name from Hawaii? Tulsi, big anti-war person, right? Then you got the UBI guy. You got Andrew Yang, and Andrew Yang can't appeal to Republicans because he went on the Ben Shapiro show, had a very good showing. And then you got the crew that is Medicare for All, and then you got a criminal justice crew. And then you get a conglomeration of politicians. So for example, when you talk about criminal justice, Justin Amash is a far right libertarian. I don't know if he's a Republican or a libertarian, but he's far right. He's a far right guy. And him and the squad drafted at the federal level something to deal with qualified immunity. I would also like something about police unions because I think that's the crux of the issue. But there is some co-belligerency there between the squad and Justin Amash. You can have some co-belligerency between Tulsi and the Pauls, and that's how you build a party coalition that actually can get shit done. Now I know it's a little bit whimsical, but ladies and gentlemen, somebody said 300 years of war. We're not going to survive another 20 years. He's probably right. We got to do something different. Everybody that's saying, "Hey, we gotta do it from within the party." Who? How? The Democrats are much. The Republic. That's clear. There would have been no Donald Trump. There is no Democrat version of Donald Trump because the Democrats are too autocratic to allow it. We need to make sure that we change the paradigm a little bit and start thinking through things a lot more strategically.
But we can have an honest disagreement about Medicare for All. We can have an honest disagreement about other things. But we agree on war because he's being
Correct.
Honest.
Correct.
And he's sticking his chin out. And he's having principle. That's a courageous guy. That's something Bernie Sanders. I would like to see more of from Bernie Sanders. I would like to see him go against the military-industrial complex and our imperialism even more.
He's not going to do it. And this is the problem. I mean, hell, even if we had a Ron Paul type, I've been saying we need a socialist Trump or a progressive Trump type figure. Even if you had a progressive Ron Paul type figure, that would be enough. But man, I cannot tell you how impactful Bernie's acquiescence to the Democratic machine in 2016 and particularly 2020 was. I'm a pretty optimistic guy, theologically speaking, but man, that was I am not certain that progressivism and America by extension can even survive after what happened in 2020. I don't think we realize how massive that was.
Like, there's no one doing it. He does it sometimes. Ron, anything you like to add to this?
Yeah, I mean,
by the way, does anybody want to be a moderator? I think we probably need to elect some moderators. So if you want to moderate for the channel, send me an email, vinensori@gmail.com. I think we need about 3. We continue.
I mean, a couple things. First of all, it is sad and not uncommon for there to just be a few lone voices in the wilderness when it comes to war. Barbara Lee was the only one to vote against the AUMF in 2001. And Ron Paul, in 2008, which was, I believe when Ron Paul ran for president, it was very telling that there were 3 people that they wanted to get off that stage as soon as possible, as soon as they could. Ron Paul was one, Dennis Kucinich was another, Mike Gravel was a third.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. That is true. That is very, very true. I didn't even catch that at the time because I was like, down in the Republican trenches. But it is true. Dennis, y'all remember Kucinich? They try to make Kucinich sound like he was like, some weirdo freak guy. And he's a politician. He probably is. I mean, what do I know? He probably is a weirdo. But they really went out and jobbed those people for sure. He's 100%. Placone is 100% right on that. I didn't catch that. Good catch by Ron Placone. By the way, if you haven't subscribed to Placone's channel, you really should, because he's super level-headed. Actually, I'm going to try to get do an interview with the homie actually. So if anybody has any connects with Placone, let him know. So hopefully, we'll publish the crappy Jimmy Dore interview tomorrow. But let's see if I can redeem myself with a good one from Placone soon.
What do they all have in common? Well, when you look at it, they don't have a lot of things in common. They have a lot of disagreements, as you pointed out. The one thing all 3 of them have in common, well, I guess Mike Gravel and Dennis Kucinich have a good amount in common, but Ron Paul, different than those two in a lot of issues. The one thing all 3 of them have in common, though, they're all against war. Who was making the rules on who got on that stage or not? The corporate media, especially MSNBC. Who owned MSNBC at the time? Now they're owned by Comcast, way better company. But at the time, MSNBC was owned by General Electric. What does General Electric do, among other things? They make bombs and profit off of bombs.
Holy
it was just right out in the open, folks.
Shit! What? I gotta look. General, you have got to be kidding me. Yeah, holy shit, guys. Look at this. Look at this. Oh my God. Look at I'm laughing, but I'm super angry right now, y'all. And this is Vin when he's like trying to control himself here. But I did not know that. You figure I'd know too, but I did not. Guys, look at this shit. Hold on for a second, Ron. I'm gonna catch you in a second, bro. I'm talking to the homie like, guys, look at this shit. Holy shit. Fucking capitalism. Look at that. Look. There's a little GE logo. Right? And then most of GE's sales of military products and services are booked by its aviation business. However, some other are also sell limited military products. Blah 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 blah. There it is, right there. And look, a lot of, the Ben, Ben Webb is like, here's Ben. Ben is my guy. I love Ben to death, but he hates my guts. What planet have you been on where you miss this? I thought I even discussed with you like a year ago. Well, Ben, you send me an email like every other day. Now, of course, if you did a show, Ben, I would tell everybody to subscribe to you, because Ben's political commentary show would automatically be better than anything I could ever do. So he needs to start one. I told him, I was like, yo, I'll get you all the gear or whatever. Just tell me what you need. I'll send it to you. But, he's not doing it. But anyway, guys, the fact that there are many of you who are like, oh yeah, we knew that. And again, like, I understand, but like, here we go, guys. All of us are seeing this, and most of y'all are like, yeah, so we knew that. It's like, yeah, I know that you knew it, but like, holy shit. And, CNN is populated with ex-agency people. I'm looking at shit, I'm like, wait a second, this guy was his agency guy. What's happening here? Like, this is our news. Now you see why these people are losing their minds trying to get independent media canceled. I'd be very, very surprised if these motherfuckers find a way. If we could still be doing this show in 365 days, I'll be really, really surprised, because holy moly. God, you need to interview Scott Horton about war and non-interventionism. Okay, I'll reach out to Scott Horton. Somebody get me Scott Horton's Twitter handle. We need to get more people interviewed here. But man, that shit is crazy. If you have 13 confirmed kills, then I'll pray for your soul, Ghoul. That must be a very horrible burden to have to carry around. God almighty. All right, there's 40 seconds left. Let me just finish it.
Again,
and be done
all
with
this
it.
idea that...
Thank God.
Now they're owned by Comcast.
Thank God poor DL Beluga didn't have to see that, because that would have broke his little heart.
Better company. But at the time, MSNBC was owned by General Electric. What does General Electric do, among other things? They make bombs and profit off of bombs. It was just right out in the open, folks. It was right out in the open.
Yeah, your news is being brought to you by defense contractors.
Yep.
How's that working out?
No conflict of interest there. Holy shit.
So, yeah, how's that working out? The Jimmy Dore Show?
I mean, it is working out the way that it's supposed to, depending on what side you're on, I suppose. Guys, this is if you are a lover of your country, let's say that lover of humanity is too broad and too whimsical. If you're just a lover of your country, you got to be somewhere between infuriated and completely depressed, right? Like this is madness. Absolutely madness. All right. Anyway, guys, shout out to Ron Paul. He was absolutely right. Give him credit for that. You don't necessarily need to be a poli-sci genius to know that this was going to be a quagmire and horrible, but he said it out on the floor. Nobody listened to him. And it's like I tell my boys all the time. I tell the boys all the time, because they're growing up. We have man time. We talk about what it means to be men biblically and all that. And, and I tell those boys, I'm like, you guys, the world you're going to inherit, you're going to need to man up. The same thing with the girls. Y'all girls, y'all going to need to woman up, because we're going to need some strong men and women to deal with this bullshit. Holy moly. What a disaster. But look, at the end of the day, guys, we always try to leave with something positive we can build on. Here's the deal, guys. These people lied us into a war in Iraq. These people lied to us on a daily basis. But now the problem is that we have guys like Jimmy Dore. And yes, I'm going to say we have guys like TYT, because we don't get Jimmy Dore without TYT initially, right? So we have these independent outlets. We've got the Gray Zone, we've got Mate, we've got Rising. I understand where everybody is with Rising, but here, and then we've got, Crystal and Sagar's news show. We've got Kalinsky. There's just an entire ecosystem right now of legitimate folks that you can watch and you can listen to them. Definitely take a grain of salt. I love the fact-checking culture that we have now as well. So this is not a situation where these people are omniscient, omnipotent actors who cannot be overcome. They can absolutely be overcome. And I think really what it's going to come down to is a battle over information portals. And you're already seeing it with this COVID stuff with Facebook. Anything relative to COVID, they jump in there and they police it. But I'm pretty sure Fauci still has a Facebook page when he blatantly lied about this shit, right? So my point is, the powers that be are going to have a significant issue with dealing with social media, because I am fully convinced that if it were not for Aaron Mate and Jimmy Dore's work Syria, that we would be more active in that region than we already are. Because you guys know we're still dropping folks over there. That's open source. That's not, you know what I'm saying? It's not privileged info. We're still dropping bodies over there, but it would have been at a much higher degree if we did not have independent media that told us the truth. And so I am very, 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 and as Tai G is saying, which is really, really true, you can tell who's telling the truth by who's being censored. Sadat, that is correct. That is correct. And as MJ is saying, they hate that the masses can communicate. Yeah, because that's how they did it before, and that's a template that they have, and now they're going to have to reorient their template. And I don't think they can look at all the puzzle pieces and say, yep, we can still come out on top in this situation. I think that they know that those days are numbered if social media continues the way that it has. Because the other side of that is that we can also hook up with somebody in Afghanistan on Skype, and they can tell us what the fuck is happening, instead of hearing from Dan Rather what the fuck is happening. And you can subscribe to Al Jazeera and things like that. And Al Jazeera is essentially corporate media, but they're still better at telling you what's going on over there than over here. So we've got so many options now, and I don't think that those folks are going to be able to manage it. So there you go. That's how you look at a situation like this and say, hey, there's still good out of it. Having said that, dear listener, in the meantime, love your neighbor, take care of each other. Middle America, we are the media. Till next time, guys.